let's start with college. Where'd you go to school?
So that's a complicated question.
Okay.
Have we talked about this before? I went to kind of 3 schools.
Okay.
So the only reason why I was going to college in the first place was because I wanted to play basketball in college.
Yep.
So I was recruited by schools from all over the country of all, like literally every size school from D1 to...
Who's the biggest school that tried to recruit you?
I was a preferred walk-on SDSU.
Okay.
That's cute.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't remember. It was like 8 years ago.
But you started basketball late, right?
So yeah, I started playing basketball freshman year of high school.
Okay.
So I was definitely late to the game. And then I wasn't really, for some reason, I wasn't drawn to any of the schools that had offered me.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and played at a JUCO in Des Moines area because when you're in the college basketball, situation, if you play JUCO, it's like extended high school. So
Yep.
like bigger D1 schools are still recruiting you. And
Yep.
I wanted to play in the NCAA tournament. Like I was like, I'm not going for some like
Oh, yeah.
just no-namer. So I went and played for the JUCO, had a great year. To reopen the yearbook, I was their second leading scorer. I started, it was a great
In
season.
high school? You were second leading
college,
scorer?
it was in
Oh, in
college.
college you were second leading
Yeah.
scorer.
And then I was still getting recruited. I don't remember. It's so long ago. Whatever.
Yeah.
And I decided to quit,
Oh.
which was controversial.
Did you finish the season or you didn't come back or you quit mid-season?
No, I quit at the end of the season.
Okay.
And never would I ever quit anything halfway through.
Yeah.
I kind of got to this point where I was like, basketball it's a huge commitment. Like it's preseason, postseason, weights, attendance sheets, curfews.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was on track to go D1, and at that point you get 30 days off a year.
Oh, really?
And I don't know, I kind of got in my head, I was like, it's either basketball, like this one thing that I love, and I sacrifice all the other things I love, or it's all the other things I love, and I sacrifice this one thing I love. For some reason, I ended up quitting basketball, and I cried about it for every year after that. Like when the season would start,
quit,
I'd
really?
be like, was that the right decision?
Here, get up on that mic a little bit, okay?
Can you hear me?
I mean, I'm sure they can, but...
And so then I moved to Columbia, Missouri for a church plant, to help with the church plant.
Really?
And
I didn't know that.
How
old were you at the time?
Cliff, I was 19.
Wow.
And we could have a whole podcast episode series on this year-long experience of my life.
Oh, wow.
But I also am like, I don't know who's going to hear this podcast.
Spill it.
The world.
Let's get it.
It was a I don't know how to like describe the experience, but it was like I call my second worst year of my life. I moved to so I was at Mizzou, and I was on not staff but like student leadership with the college ministry. The whole situation was kind of messy. I ended up getting really hurt by the staff, and in really unnecessary ways. Looking back, and then I decided that I needed to leave. So, again.
You spent a year there?
I spent a whole year there,
okay.
yeah. It was a gnarly experience. Like, some of the details, I got kicked off leadership. I got ghosted. Like, there were just a handful of things that happened. And I say that, like, I think churches are messy.
Yeah.
They really are messy. And that's okay. And I've healed from that experience. So when I think about those people, I genuinely only feel love.
Yeah.
But when I remember some of those moments, I'm like, oh, I was actually not treated super well.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I was the first person to leave the church plant, and that felt really weird. I remember I left, it was like late April, like April 29th. And it was like this, literally when I was driving away from Columbia, the sun was setting and I started sobbing. I was like so relieved.
Oh, wow.
And it's just like, oh, that experience. People are going to have so many questions. Send me an email, I guess. I need to write about it, I think. I'm going to publish like a blog series on it, maybe. Not sure.
Yeah. Why do you feel that most churches are messy? Or not most of them, but why do you think like here's some I've thought about. Okay.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
So when we get like offended or hurt by someone, I've been thinking lately, it feels selfish because I'm saying I need their reaction for whatever I did, like their reaction of hostility or whatever they're giving me needs to like fit in with exactly how I want to take it, or
Yeah.
else I'm mad. So like me being offended or sad or whatever, like to someone's actions or whatever, it feels selfish
Like
because
you're inconvenienced.
yeah, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
how dare you say something that doesn't align with how I want to experience it
Sure.
or take it. You know what I mean?
In high school, I used to say I don't believe in drama because drama just means that their problems are insignificant.
Yeah.
They're like affecting you in a way that's like, oh, now you're burdened by their problems. It's like, no, there's just broken people. Like, there's a lot
Yeah.
going on. Have some empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think that just situations in general are messy.
Yeah.
Humans are just messy. Specifically within the church, and I don't know, I feel like maybe and I don't know if I have like a great opinion. I have some ideas. I don't really want to have an opinion because
Yeah.
I don't care about being right or wrong. I'm open to the dialogue. I just think that there's been a big push for like the brand of Christianity, and I think that that gets really messy because that's not the heartbeat of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And that specifically in that situation, when you start a church, the business side of things, and you get this, like you're with Revival right now, like starting a new church, there is a business side of things that some people are good at, some people are not, some people believe is necessary, some people don't believe is necessary. And I was in this position where like I could not handle that we literally in our weekly meetings would talk about the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just and I'm not going to say that that's wrong 100% of the time, but even just having like a dialed out social media and like super high production, which again, I'm not saying is bad 100% of the time.
Right.
Just sometimes we sacrifice
Like
the
mission
brand of
behind- yeah.
Christianity for like the people of Jesus and like
Right.
and sometimes I can get salty about mission statements for churches because I'm like, who are you to say like who you attract? Like
Yep.
I work in marketing. I know what brand identity and target market is.
Mm-hmm.
What about just like being faithful with who Jesus brings to your doorstep?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What about making it as ridiculously diverse as possible? Or like when I was in Turkey this summer, Marty Solomon, he told me, he's like, community is not friendship. Community is radical fellowship with people you disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I actually really agree with that. I think that church should be like a place where people politically, socially, economically are like, it's diverse because we can learn something from everyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that just like that, when we start to cultivate what we think church is when it gets kind of messy.
Yeah.
But I'm still like, so long story short, I was incredibly wounded. And I would say, having been 5.5 years removed, rightly so, I returned to a similar church, a church that was in the same network, kind of dragging my heels. I really didn't want to now that I had seen it from the inside. But I had a lot of friends there, and I was like, okay, I got to go. Or I want to go. And I remember thinking, like, if God still is doing something with this church, with this network, if he still loves this church and this network, then I guess I have to like try to like to love this as well. Or have to is kind of a strong word, but I felt compelled to like at least heal like on good terms.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was like a 1.5 year long process of like some intense cynicism within me, like sitting there during worship, just crossing my arms,
Yeah.
to like actually like rejoicing with the church. And it was a powerful experience.
Do you think everyone has to go through that cynicism at some point to experience God's true grace? Like you kind of have to like recognize your cynicism that you have to like see it in other people. It's like it's okay to have cynicism because you went through that. You know what I mean?
Okay, I don't think so. I don't think you have to, because I think cynicism is not a fruit of the spirit.
Right, yeah.
I actually think cynicism can be really dangerous. Talk about like the deconstruction talk that's going on in today's world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of people have gotten hurt by the church, then end up, honestly, I had no idea we were going here today, have gotten hurt by the church, then they start some social media brand of like, come find church hurt healing from me, where all their content is just cynical towards the church.
Yeah.
It's like, are you really going to like crap on thousands of years of beautiful church history.
Yeah.
Right? Like, sometimes I think about that. I'm like, the church is not all bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think that the idea that redemption this side of heaven is not possible is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I think we as followers of Jesus should default to hope.
Yep.
I don't think that means we have to see everything through. I do think that means that we can leave, but I do not think we should entertain cynicism. We should fight to not be cynical. I don't think, like, Jesus, there was no ounce of Jesus that was cynical.
Yep.
I don't know. That's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, not to turn it like self-helpy or whatever, but I feel like victimhood is rooted in narcissism. It's like people that feel victim to something. It's like going back to what I was saying before. It's like you think you're the most important person and everyone should be catered around you. It's like just going to like a church like knowing that they're people, they're gonna hurt you, or they have the capability of doing that. You know what I mean?
And it's like no excuse for someone. Like, I shouldn't go into a situation and be like, oh, I could probably get hurt. So then if you hurt me, I'm like, oh, I expected it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not the expectation.
No,
it's not that you get hurt. But it's like there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And and I think that's why I argue it's important to know your people. You know?
I think that's why hard when people get hurt by churches, they put like church people up on a pedestal and forget, no, they're just actual people.
Yeah.
It's like, no, they're Christians. They should never do anything that will hurt me or offend me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, they're just people that are like, trying to live a Christian lifestyle and trying to be like Christ.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
100%. Yeah.
So you went on this church plant mission.
So I came back for the church plant. Okay, Cliff, when I talk about this like 4 years of life, I'm always like, what was I thinking? And not in a way like, you idiot. I was like, how was I making somewhat rational decisions?
Yeah.
Because I was young for my grade, so I just always felt young. Like I moved to Missouri at 19, and I joined a church plant, and then I quit the church plant, and this was like all on my own. Like it was this, I don't know, this experience. Anyway, I get back and I'm like, okay, I need to drop out of college. Like I need to not be in school right now because I know that I have too much to process right now, and if I'm in school, I'm just going to distract myself. So I dropped out of school, which everyone was like, you never go back. And the whole time I was like, I know I'm going back. Like, I don't know why you're telling me that I'm not going back when I'm the one who goes back. You know what I mean? People and their opinions. So I dropped out of school, and God was doing like a lot in me with what he was teaching me about, like, specifically when I was a part of that ministry. I felt super inadequate because I didn't fit the brand. The way that I did ministry looked a lot different than everyone else. So literally right when I left, I drove to Montana 5 days later, and I biked from Montana to Wisconsin.
Was Big Al living here? Did you know anyone?
No. Yeah, I did. I knew people who lived in Bozeman, but I was biking to Wisconsin with my friend Tracy.
Okay, cool.
And I remember being on that bike ride, and this is backtracking a little bit, but I remember being on that bike ride and being like, oh, some people can sit down and do structured ministry one-on-one with people, and that's great. Like, praise God. Some people hop on a bike in their chacos with no training and ride for 14 days straight, and that's all right. And I fell into the latter category, and like God did some like serious healing in my soul while I was like biking through North Dakota. Anyway, so the next semester I like dropped out of school, and I just did some like random traveling, which I am not an advocate for just like leaving and traveling as a way of whatever. I just said yes to a couple of trips, and I ended up in Oregon and Colorado and just doing random things. And then I started working at this coffee shop in a hospital with like a bunch of who I would consider misfits. Like they were all like would get together and play like Dungeons and Dragons, and it was like a guy who did drag, some couple really nerdy people. Like it was such an interesting vibe. I would like close and play Nickelback with my friend Calvin, who's one of my coworkers, and it was one of the most life-giving times of my life. And like we talked about Jesus minimally, but I just had so much fun. And then the next semester, I went back to Iowa State. Okay. Well, I started at Iowa State. Yep. With a degree in public relations. It was still kind of rough. Like, I don't know how much processing really got done. It was still a relatively rough season. A lot of my friends had kind of, like, made other friends, and so I kind of had to restart. It was, like, freshman year times 3. Yeah. Because everywhere I went felt like freshman year. And then I remember going into senior year, people kept asking me, what are you doing with public relations degree? And I was like, I don't know, I hate it. And some light bulb clicked, and I was like, wait, I don't want to do something that I hate. Like, I should do something that I love.
Yep.
The day classes started, I changed my major to journalism. Honestly, on a whim. Best decision of my life. And was picking up classes like the day of, just like showing up to random classes. There was one class in particular that I had to get into. It was called Writing and Reporting for Broadcast Media. And it was a lab class, so it was full. And I had to get into it because it wasn't offered till the next semester, or till the next, they didn't have it in spring, but so I'd have to wait a whole nother year for this one class to graduate. So I emailed the dean, and they're like, ask your professor. I emailed my professor. She's like, no, it's closed. It's a lab. You can only have so many computers. And so I just decided that I was going to be a part of the class. So I just started going to the class, sitting in my corner with my computer, and turning in assignments for about 3 weeks until she was like, okay, fine, you're in the class.
You weren't even in the class.
I wasn't in the class. Yeah, I was just like a fly on the wall attending this 2.5 hour long class twice a week.
Wow.
Because I needed to be in it. And I took 2 19 credit semesters.
Did you know she would eventually let you in? Is that what your hope was?
I was convinced that I could convince her. Sometimes I mean, it was like there was no other option. It was either be bold or like don't graduate until. And at that point I already knew I wanted to move to Montana after graduation, so I didn't want to have to be in Iowa for another semester for one class. You know, so yeah, and she let me in. It was one of my favorite classes I've ever taken. It was hard. Oh my gosh, it was hard. But yeah, that's kind of like my college experience.
So what did
up to this point.
you graduate with? What were your degrees?
My degree's in journalism and mass communications, and then I have a minor in sociology.
Okay.
Yeah.
So saying you're a professional writer, what does that mean? You write copyright, you do a bunch of work for other companies in Montana mainly?
Well, yes and no. So, professional writer, I guess like I'm a writer. I get paid to write. Maybe that's what makes me a professional. So I do copywriting. I service clients of all sorts, businesses particularly. And some people don't really understand what copywriting is. It basically just means like words in simple, like on a website, on social media,
so
for blog posts, SEO,
marketing.
I do a lot of marketing. Well, I did before grad school. Last 2 years, I've done a lot of that. And a lot of that was like conversion copy or helping clients up their brand. So I understand like the marketing world. And then in addition to that, I pursue bylines, which basically just means like get my name in print publications. So magazines, websites, newspapers. And that's something that I'm kind of new to. So I don't have as many as I would like yet, but I have like a board of like my kind of like dream publications to get on and pieces that I'm like workshopping to get into that. And then in addition, I'm working on a biography right now for a camp in Wisconsin.
The one that you worked for?
Yeah, and it's been like one of the funnest projects of my life. And that should be done in, our timeline is 1 to 3 years.
Yep.
I think it's going to be more like 2.
Okay.
And then
I have 2 specific questions for you about your book.
Okay, so then I have a story that I want to tell you about. Okay, so as far as writing goes, which I know you didn't ask this. But as far as writing goes, a lot of times writers niche down, right? They're like, I'm just a copywriter, I'm just a playwright, I'm just a narrative nonfiction writer.
Yep.
That's never been my thing. And I know I would make a lot more money if I niched down. But I don't want to do it. Yep. Like, sorry. It's like me why I quit basketball to do all these things. It's like I'm not just going to like quit all like poetry and narrative nonfiction and whatever just because I want to write plays.
Is it because it's more fun to do everything else? Is that why you don't want to niche down?
Oh, no, it's fun, but I'm just interested in all the areas. You know, I'm like, well, what would it be like to write a screenplay?
Yeah.
Like, I want to write a screenplay. So on that, okay, so a side hustle that I've been doing right now while I'm in school is like getting groceries / helping out the local Jewish rabbi.
Okay.
I showed up at his house on Sunday, and he's like, asked his kids, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And they're like, Bozeman Hot Springs. So he hands me the credit card, and we go to Bozeman Hot Springs. It was funny because on the way there, I was playing like Elton John, and the kids were like, this is boring. And so I was
Who
like.
are these kids?
His kids.
Oh, his kids, gotcha.
And I handed them the aux, and they start blaring Israeli rap because
Oh,
they
no
all
way.
can like speak Hebrew kind of. Anyway, I was at the hot springs, and I ended up sitting next to this guy because they're like playing in the water. I'm just reading a book. Sitting next to this guy, and I start talking to him. He looks like he's like late 40s. I'm not going to say his name. Anyway, I start figuring out what he does, and he's a commercial producer.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows, he's like, has a house in LA, a house in New York, house in Bozeman, makes a ton of money. His like ex-girlfriend wrote Stranger Things. Like he's like really in Hollywood and really in New York and has traveled all over the world. Long story short, he's like born in Bozeman. And so he's always wanted to write a short film in Bozeman.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me his email address and like basically told me to send him a script.
Do you have one that you've already been writing, or are you?
No, but it kind of like that contact was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do something with that. Okay, so then, in addition to that, I'm currently finishing up.
Hold on. Did he give you a timeline on when he needs a script by,
No,
and when he's trying to?
it's just something he really wants to do. So if he
So
gets a
there's-
script that he
got
wants
it.
to use, he'll use
So he
it.
doesn't have one. There's no timeline.
No, yeah,
yet.
there's no timeline. He doesn't need to work on a timeline.
Okay.
So then, that's just fun. Anyway, finally, I'm finishing up a project called Catch Me Dancing. It's a narrative collection of poetry, a coming of age type story.
And this is your book you're writing.
And I'm in love with it. Yeah.
Would you call it a book?
Yep. Oh,
Just
yeah.
a book.
Yeah. I'd say, yeah.
Okay. It's not like a.
It's probably going to be around 115 pages. So it's
Okay.
going to be small, but it's, yeah.
So
It'll be compiled in a
why
book.
are you writing it, and why do you think people want to listen or want to read it?
Why am I writing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, is it for you just to put out for a passion project, or is it because you think that this will bring joy, laughter,
Yeah, no,
love,
I know
help?
exactly why I'm writing
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So my favorite thing about poetry
Mm-hmm.
is that, in writing in general, not just poetry, but my favorite thing about writing in general is how collaborative it is.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is I can't write anything that's original. Everything that I write is something that someone else has also felt. I'm not saying everyone's felt it, but someone else has also felt it. And I just got to like give words to a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That collaborative like experience like gives me so much life. It feels like friendship. It feels like nostalgia. Like it feels like people are reconnecting with parts of themselves. And so this particular book, there's a lot, it's coming of age. It kind of spans 10 years of my life.
Okay.
And it is, I mean, it's full of like themes of like nostalgia and friendship and whimsy and wonder and curiosity and growing up and character and things that I'm not the only one who's ever felt that way.
Yep.
And so I'm hopeful that it like reignites something in someone, kind of like they're being invited to like a bonfire of their like youth, or like coming back to a memory that was precious.
Yeah.
In a way where you can bring what that was into now.
Okay.
Kind of a preservation of youthfulness
Okay.
in a way.
So
And
like
what
a
was-
very nostalgic, just reminiscent on life and like loving the journey you went through. Is that kind of what? Like, is there
Yeah.
like healing or growth that they'll experience
Yes,
through it too?
all of those.
Okay.
So, there's a couple of things that like inspired this idea. The first was this poem by John Blaze. I honestly forget what it's called, but he has this line in the poem that essentially says, like, apparently the kingdom prefers children, and he's talking about that Bible verse that talks about like how now I forget it, but like basically the kingdom is for children. Like you must be like a child.
Right.
And I heard that poem and I was like, oh, if the kingdom truly prefers children, and I'm talking like kingdom, like heaven on earth kingdom.
Yep.
Like, why are we acting like adults?
Mm.
And I'm not saying like childish, but I'm saying
Yeah.
childlikeness. Like that whole, I wake up and I asked a bunch of friends on social media the other day, like what they miss the most about being a child. And it was like waking up with endless possibilities and baseball with my friends and not having to worry about money. And I sat there and I was like, literally every single one of these things is still accessible. And I'm like, why don't we as children of God, like wake up with that expectancy of like, what is today going to bring?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just beautiful. And then I watched The Adam Project. Have you seen it on Netflix?
No.
Okay. Well, spoiler alert. It was a good movie. And there was this part where, like, it's like a kind of a time travel-esque movie where, like, old Adam is talking to young Adam.
Okay.
And old Adam's like, I've spent most of my life trying to get rid of you. You're annoying, like, da-da-da. But now I realize that you're always the best part of me.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that, like, those ideas of, like...
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's something Jack and I talk about a lot.
Really?
Because I'll tell stuff to Jack, who was on the last podcast. Things I'm excited for as far as, like, maturing and growing up in life, family, all these different things, responsibilities. And his thing he always tells me is, in Jack's voice, don't lose that chara, man. Like, just don't be don't grow up to an adult. Which I know what he means. He doesn't mean, like, don't get responsibility. He just means, like, don't lose that that gleeful joy for life.
That wonder.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that innocence, like that joy, that hope. It's like, yeah, life is hard. And by no means do I mean just, like, sit down and, like, ski your life away or whatever.
Yep.
Like, I am so for pursuing dreams, actually becoming something in this world.
Yep.
But I think that there's something that we can't leave behind. So in short, that's kind of the whole idea, like, Catch Me Dancing is kind of like,
I love
if
that.
you, and I'm actually still working on the subtitle. I don't know exactly what I'm going to call it, but I like that idea of, like, just catch me dancing through life. Actually, it was something that my basketball coach, so I started playing when I was a freshman. So I did a lot of one-on-one practice with the coach because I couldn't even do a layup. And he knew that I danced for 6 years. And so he would constantly say, like, the footwork, it's just like dancing. It's just like dancing. And I kind of, like, coined that. And I was like, and there's a lot of things that are just like dancing, just like dancing. And yeah, so just that idea of just even bringing, like, dance and youthfulness into
So when
life,
are you going to finish, you think?
So it will be finished here very shortly.
Okay.
I think I want 4 to 6 months to promote it before I release it.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards April. April is my favorite month.
Self-publishing?
Yeah, I might query an agent here still, but I don't know if I want to. Because I want a little bit more creative control. I'm also not worried about traditional publishing right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to write a book proposal for a traditional publisher. I don't know if I want to do that with this one.
Okay.
But yeah, April, it'll be a Tuesday. That's when you release books.
Okay.
And I'm going to throw a party here in Bozeman.
April of next year. You're going to have
I'm not
launch.
sure. I don't have a date yet,
Kay.
but yeah, for sure.
Nice.
It's going to be really fun. I'm excited.
Heck yeah. So now you're in a master's program at MSU, which I'm actually super stoked about.
Have we not talked about it?
We've talked briefly
gosh.
We've talked before you started school.
Okay.
Yeah, not since you started.
No way.
So what is the master's program? I forget what it's called.
Okay, so it's a master's of innovation and management.
Okay.
So it's essentially MSU's accelerated MBA.
Okay, cool.
So it's a 1-year master's degree, cohort model, so there's just 27 of us.
And the professor, Ara?
He's one of 5 professors.
He's one of 5, okay.
Yeah.
Is he one of the
He's
main?
the director.
He's the director.
Yeah.
Okay. What is
you
ours?
should have him on this podcast.
Know. I know a little bit about him.
You totally should.
Because his background is he was a Army Ranger.
Yeah.
Army Ranger.
Yeah. He was a professor at West Point.
Okay.
Yeah, he has a cool
He helped
background.
start Mountain Tough.
Yep. Yeah.
He was like the original founders of that.
A current executive coach, director of. Yeah, you have to have him on this podcast.
Yeah. Cool.
He leads like a house church. Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah.
I like Ara a lot. He's writing a book right now. I'm helping him with his proposal currently. Yeah.
So tell me about this master's program. Why did you decide to get into it? And like, what's it about? Like, what, like, in like.
I keep feeling like I'm talking a lot, and then I'm realizing that you're asking questions of me.
Here, let me put it more succinctly.
Yeah.
So it's called innovation management. What was it called?
A master's of innovation and
Master's of
management.
innovation management. Okay.
MSIM is what we call it.
So the goal of going through this is for you to do what when you're done? You want to help. What do you want to do?
Well, that's a complicated question because I have an idea, but I'm not holding it too tightly.
Okay.
I'm kind of allowing this program to help me, like, change my thought.
Okay. So you're very open-minded going into it.
Yes. The plan
with some
right
direction.
now, and it hasn't changed yet, but we're only 6 weeks into the program. The plan is to go into organizational psychology. I
Yep.
want to coach executive teams on the relational side of business to increase profit based off of how they treat their people. That's
You would
right
love
now.
talking to so Greg Slamowitz. He used to be a professor at MSU. I know him because working at the Yellowstone Club.
Oh, sure.
Know him and his family up there, Kirsten and Annalise, who she works for John Tester right now, which is super
sick.
sweet. Did you see that on my Instagram story?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, so Greg wrote a book called Flip Your Pyramid,
Oh,
and
heck.
he taught at MSU at the Jabs College for a while. I don't know his whole story.
Sure.
But it was pretty much about flipping the pyramid of having like a bottom down, like valuing your employees so much and like changing the culture from the bottom up.
Whoa.
And he sold his company for like $200 million in New
No
York.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Really cool guy.
That's kind of what I want to do. 200 million, just kidding. I'm not that money motivated. I'm really relationship motivated.
Neither is Greg because he taught at MSU for a long time.
That's true.
So yeah.
Okay, so how this all started, I was planning on going to seminary.
Mm-hmm.
And I was enrolled. I was excited about it. It's something I've been wanting to do forever. And I wanted to go to seminary for personal reasons, just for extra education, especially if I want to write in a theology genre. I wanted to just handle the Word of God more in a more academic way.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to Turkey this summer, and I studied the ministry of Paul and the 7 churches of Revelation. And it was a ridiculous experience. And one of the things that I learned is that the like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th century Jews were bringing the kingdom of God to earth through work, not through ministry. They were engaging the culture. They were working jobs. And that made me consider, interesting, I want to work. And I've always wanted to work. And but I think I was just kind of like delaying the process in some ways. I'm like, okay, let me build this like writer part of me. I really struggled with monetizing writing. I didn't really like doing that. I wanted to just be more selective with my writing projects. So at the same time, I was like, okay, how do I separate my writing from my work so that I can keep them both sacred and they don't have to feel like a chore? Then I read this book called Think Again by Adam Grant, which you would love. One of my favorite books ever. And he talks a lot about cognitive flexibility and just pivoting and rethinking and whatever. So I talked to my counselor, and we were dialoguing, what should I do with my life? And then one day, these cars are going to be really loud.
No, they're not.
One day, I was scrolling MSU's website, and I found this program. So I literally applied to it on a whim. This is like 3 weeks before classes start.
Oh, yeah.
I get an email back from...
I was there at the coffee shop.
Yeah, you were. And then I emailed them. I'm like, what's the status of my application? Like I didn't just submit it. And the program started in 3 weeks. And Ara emails me back, and he was like, we start reviewing applications for 2023 in January. And I said, what about this year? So he called me. We hit it off. I ended up calling Alex, and then he was like, sounds great, you should do it. And so then I called back, and I was like, okay, I'm in.
Yep.
He gave me a fat scholarship, was really helpful. And then I started class like a week later, literally a week later. Anyway, the program is, I'm just loving it. So it's a cohort model. Every class we're in different teams. There's a lot of real life experience. The first week we had a sprint, and basically it was Monday and Tuesday classes all day. Then we got put in teams, and then an executive board, actually I can't say the name of the company, but an executive board here in Bozeman pitched their problem. They revenue like $45 million. In this business, they pitched their problem to us. We had 2.5 days to come up with our solution in a full presentation, pitch the our like whole faculty, some angel investors, our coaches, and their whole executive board, and pretend like we knew what we were talking about. So I spent the Wednesday, Thursday, we presented all Friday morning.
Yep.
In those 2.25 days, I spent almost 40 hours with my team. And we were calling we were calling people, we're researching, we're writing, we're walking in and out of professors' rooms, and it was competition too. I forgot to mention that. Like,
okay.
It was a big competition.
How many was on your team?
4 on a team.
Okay.
And then there were 7 teams.
Yep.
And I remember when all that was done that Friday, I left campus, having literally lived on campus that week, and I like cried. I was so happy. I was like, this is the best experience of my life. I'm having so much fun.
Yeah.
And so then since then we got into a more regular schedule. We're taking innovation strategy, leadership for influence, new product innovation where we're bringing a product to market, finance for innovation.
This sounds like a blast.
You get like Cliff, you would love it. You would love it so much. So much.
Like
yeah, it's basically like marketing, finance, business, leadership, management. It's kind of like all in one.
Yeah.
But
going back to your dating aficionado.
What
So
why'd you put that on there?
Because you have
I've only ever dated one person.
Well, I know. Well, actually, I didn't know that, but I heard. Because you have a memory.
That's right.
On your Instagram, like a story series.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Your dating service.
My dating service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you love setting people up on blind dates.
Yeah.
Or just dates in general. And like, I don't know, just doing all this stuff with like a relationship. So.
Are you curious why?
I'm curious why. And then I've got some couple questions on it because I think you're passionate about it. So we're going to get into it.
One of the reasons why is because I have some friends who want to be in relationships, but are just struggling to find relationships.
Yep.
And I like to be the middleman. Like, I'm okay with being the middleman. I'm okay with being like, let me just take initiative and get you a date.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm like, grow a pair and just ask her out. But sometimes I'm just like...
So these guys that...
both. I mean, and I feel like I know a decent amount of people. So my network of single people is relatively big.
Yeah.
And I genuinely just think I know some of the best people in the whole entire world and I want to connect them.
Yep.
So it's like if I can do something, I want to do something.
And you've read quite a bit of books on relationships, dating, or no?
No.
Really?
I've read a couple.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've probably picked up quite a few, but I've never liked many.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I just like relationships, like not even just like platonic relationships I even like.
Okay.
And so I think the whole like find a life partner kind of thing, I'm like, okay, I'll help. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Right?
So what makes people compatible? Since because on...
Oh my gosh.
Wait. So on Emily's dating service, it's a Google Docs form, right?
That's right.
All these questions go to, and you essentially matchmake from that.
Yeah.
So if they want a matchmaker, they can go to your Instagram, which is what?
That's
Emily
a plug.
Kniddle Davis? What is it?
Emily Kniddle Davis.
And go to your second story, and it's dating service.
What makes someone
So
compatible?
yeah, like how are you figuring out how to match them together? What makes them compatible?
Is there such thing as compatibility?
For sure. Why not?
Okay, I think you're right.
I've dated a few people, and I've definitely been more compatible with some than others. And some girls that I wasn't compatible with were arguably better girls on paper, like just 10 out of 10 girls.
I'll be honest, Cliff, if you would have asked me this question 3 years ago, I probably would have had a better answer. It's a lot more nuanced now because having been married now, I'm like, maybe I didn't think I knew everything.
Yep.
People ask me sometimes, I'm not diverting the question. People ask me how I knew Alex was the one. And I kind of got annoyed with the question. I was like, was I supposed to know? All that I really knew was that I just preferred life to have him in it, like my life to have him in it.
Yep.
And so I think compatibility is sometimes like, do you like the person? Like genuinely just like them? Like, and do you like cheering them on? Like, are you excited about what they think God has them here to do? And do they cheer you on? Like those kind of things feel like compatibility to me. Like personality wise, I'm like, honestly, Alex and I are not very opposite. Yep. We have a lot of friends that are very opposite who are in relationships and they're fine. Alex and I, like, he's more introverted. I'm more extroverted. I like large social gatherings. He doesn't really as much. But most everything else, like, we kind of like all the same things.
Yep.
But he's I don't know, like there's parts of that have been really, like the opposite parts that have been really great, but the fact that we have all the same interests has also been super fun for us.
Mm-hmm.
Just, and some people don't have that. So I'm like, compatibility, I feel like it's almost a gut thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I did.
I think you're right too. I think people that I've had more in common with, mainly sports, the competitive nature, especially, I've got along a lot better with.
Yeah.
And usually when they have the competitive nature, they're more able to take, like if I'm poking fun at them or talking crap to them, and they can like dish it back, which I find really fun.
Yeah.
So I think like the sports background for me has played a big role in compatibility.
I have a feeling that if you have to think too much about whether or not you're compatible with someone, you're probably not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like you just know. Like your teammates, you're like, oh yeah, I know.
One thing I usually try and like remember is like, should I keep pursuing this girl or not? Or is there a future or not? Am I better for the kingdom with her or without her?
Sure.
And that's just like the basis I look at it.
Yeah.
It's like, do I feel myself being pulled away from my perceived calling?
Sure.
If so, it's probably not the person I should be pursuing.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice.
Thoughts on that?
I mean, I think you nailed it. I think that
cool.
I mean, that makes sense to me, right? Like, what does God have for you?
Cool. 2 more questions on this.
I love it. I should start a dating podcast.
I know. First of all, with dating, I'm just going to say this real quick. It's a learning curve. I started late to the dating world.
Yeah.
Because various reasons, but I wasn't like 24 until I had like a semi-serious relationship.
Sure.
Which will be 26 in like a month. It's a learning curve.
Yeah.
For sure. Anyways, what are most people wrongly looking for in a relationship? Like, what are their sights set on that it's like, yeah, your sights are just not dialed in, Like, that's a wrong, like when people are like, oh, I want this relationship, I'm looking for this. What is like the most common thing they're looking for that's probably wrong?
This is above my pay grade, I think.
You think so? Miss Dating Service?
Let me think. What is the wrong thing that people are looking for?
I got a different question, too, if you want to pass.
Maybe. Okay, hear me out.
Yeah.
This is going to be kind of a long-winded answer. Congrats, podcast listeners. I think what can be the wrong thing is when people are looking for someone who makes them feel like them.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is I remember when I was early on to dating, I heard people had broken up with people because, like, he just didn't let me be me or something of the like.
Yep.
And I realized that you can't be just you. Mm-hmm. Like, when you're in a relationship with someone, there's sacrifices on both of the spectrums that are going to make each person kind of like lean into that tension in between. Mm-hmm. Like, I look like a little bit more like Alex and Alex looks a little bit more like me. Yep. It's not just about me. And so I think sometimes they're looking for that. People are looking for someone who makes them feel like, and they think it's a red flag if they don't. Obviously, there's some stuff, there's like definitely a fine line there where it's like, yeah, people should encourage like who you are, but also it's not about just you.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know, that's a little bit vague, but that's something that I've definitely seen.
No, I like it. I think most people think like changing who they are is a negative thing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it in changing who you are a certain amount it's a discipline in dying to self.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I could just be who I am. And if you don't fit it, then it's like, whatever, like next.
Sure.
But I think there's something so admirable and noble in saying, no, you're more important than me. Not because you're like worth more than me, but because like I value you so much. And I'm selfless. Like, I'm not saying I'm selfless, but I'm saying, like, you should be selfless where I'm like, I'm going to put your needs above me. I think that's a super attractive trait and a noble cause to chase. You know?
I mean, I have some hot takes about relationships.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that sometimes people just don't date for long enough.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what hurts to date, like, for a year, like a full calendar year?
Uh-huh.
You know, like, because you can learn stuff about people that way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, last question on this. If you could change one thing about all men, / if you could change one thing about all women, doesn't have to be the same thing. What would it be? Like in this day and age of like social media, instant gratification, just
This is a question you should have had me know that I was going to be answering.
I know. I thought about almost texting
okay.
it to you beforehand, but I didn't.
What is one thing that I would change about all men and one thing that I would change about all women? Okay, this is super cliche, but it's the same answer.
Yeah.
Like, I almost hate that I'm saying this. No, I don't hate. I love that I'm saying this. I would change that all men and all women would understand that they were made in the image of God and that they have innate dignity and worth. Because I think that that's where, even in relationships, Cliff, that. Like it's where you get insecure and start thinking too much. It's because you don't know that like you are made in the image of God, you are loved, you have dignity, you are enough.
Yeah, 100%.
And women, even in like body image issues that are like affecting 97.3% of women, and just deep-rooted insecurities, and it would just be that they would like know that like no, they are like powerful and beautiful and important and strong and and just made in the image of God. I would just want, whether or not people choose to follow Jesus, I still want them to know that. Yeah.
I've got a hot take on that. It might come off misogynistic.
Okay, let's hear it.
So be honest with me if it is. But here's how I view some things.
Yeah.
So it's like, say a guy's dating a girl or whatever, and like she's like kind of like not into it, and she's going away, and he feels like so desperate. He's like, no, clinging to her. He's like, no. Yeah. I'm just so distraught. Or vice versa. One thing I like tell myself to remember and other people to remember, it's like, okay, if you were royalty back in the day, if you were heir to the throne of princess or prince, if you're heir to the throne, you would know this innate value you have, Yeah. You wouldn't go like chasing and groveling and just like worrying about like, oh no, do they like me or not? It's like, no, you have this innate value of being heir to the throne, and you wouldn't have to like overthink things. It's not like a self-centered cockiness, but it's like a self-assurance, like, no, I know my worth, I know who I am. So then relating that to being the child of the God that created the universe, it's like that's even more so, like I am like the child created by the guy that created all the universe. Why would I devalue myself to a certain degree? Like, why wouldn't I have this like assurance that I'm made in God's image? I don't need to have this like scarcity mindset. I don't need to like, oh no, like it's not gonna. It's like, no, I should be assured in like who I am, knowing that I have flaws, I've got weaknesses, I'm not perfect, but I don't need to. If it's not a fit, that's fine.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and no, I agree with that. I think, especially as Christians, sometimes we think that we are the only ones who are royalty.
Yeah.
And that's actually like a terrible posture to have.
Yeah.
Because it's
not true.
Just rude.
Yeah.
But also the fact that God gives himself even to people who don't worship him is what makes him the God of all gods.
Yeah.
In pagan culture, gods only give themselves to people who worship him.
Right.
Which means that God is pretty dope.
Yeah.
Like, in short, right?
Uh-huh.
And loving and kind and powerful. And even just seeing that dignity in other people.
Yep.
I mean, when we start like practicing what we preach, that's when heaven's going to come to earth.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I like it. So just to cap this off, because it's been a pretty long one. Good one, though. I've enjoyed
Sorry, I can talk a lot.
No, it's been super good. So, bonfire conversations.
Yeah.
What is this? How can people find out what it is?
Cliff, you're so great at shameless plugs for me.
I know.
Bonfire Conversations is my newsletter. So
weekly?
It's monthly right now because I'm in grad school and that's a lot of work.
Yep.
But it is a newsletter where I send out monthly. It's the idea of the newsletter is like it's an invitation to like a bonfire out back, essentially.
Okay.
And so in the newsletter, I normally tell a story or like I write something on like a conversation topic, something that feels a little more like intimate in some ways. And then it's where I'll send things that I don't like post online, like
Yeah.
certain photos or like I don't know, just random stuff like that. It's also where all my updates for blog posts or books or whatever.
Okay.
Go on. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
So it's just kind of
So they can subscribe to that EmilyKnittleDavis.com, right?
Yes.
Or go to your Instagram.
Yes, that's it.
Sweet. And then your book's coming out April, or your
Yes.
launch party's April?
April. They'll both be the same time.
Both be same
Yep.
time. April 2023.
Come to Bozeman
Catch
if you
me
want to be a part of
dancing.
it. Yeah.
Okay. Love it.
So good.
Thanks for coming on, Emily.
Thanks for having me, Cliff.
You're the best. Ed. I knew Emily as Emily Knittle. EK is what we called her. And now she's married. So now she's Edie.
I'm still EK though.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming. Love you.
You're the best.
You're the best. Peace.